India's market news headquarters. Cutting-edge analysis. Influential insights. Market-moving intelligence. Broadcasting live from the CNBC TV 18 Motilal Oswal studios in Mumbai.
Good morning. You're with us here on a fresh new edition of Bazaar Morning Call. It's a Wednesday morning, middle of the week. We're coming to you as always from the CNBC TV 18 Motilal Oswal studios. I'm Prashant. With me, my colleagues Surabhi and Nigel. Guys, hi, good morning.
Hi, morning, folks.
Morning.
Good to have both of you back, and we're waking up to some good news. The best among them that at least in the Middle East, there's a ceasefire. It's not entirely over. We still have issues raging in Gaza and Ukraine, but at least between Lebanon and Israel, there's a ceasefire. Fantastic news, I'd say, to start the day at least.
Well, that's right, and good for humanity, above all. Though we track the financial markets, but good for humanity, so hopefully better sense prevails.
And now for the second one, which is Russia-Ukraine. And I hope that gets done as well as we sort of see Trump coming into the White House early January. He's promised. So we'll see. But let's just rewind the clock back and tell you, beginning, what you need to know from the U.S. market session. So U.S. equities hit another all-time high. And for the S&P 500, it is the 52nd record of the year. I mean, you just need to sit back and look at what the U.S. has done this year. It's just incredible. I think the S&P is up some 26% in 2024. It's really in the top 5 percentile of performance. I mean, if you can go back the last 100 years. And what is even more remarkable, of course, is that, the rally, the 26% has come in for a majority, 50-60% of the 26% has come in from about 7-8 names. So it's just been a remarkable year, really. Those are the changes last night. S&P, Nasdaq, Russell, though, was a little lower. The 10-year yield, 3 basis points higher. We left off at about 4.3%. You had FOMC minutes, which showed that people were a little more at least in terms of commentary in that meeting, saying, well, rate cuts perhaps need to be a little more gradual. So in that sense, incrementally hawkish as compared to the previous FOMC meeting. Dollar went up a little bit, but marginally so, 106.87 on dollar. Oil prices, again, flattish, but we'll see if there is a bit of a move coming in this morning. So U.S. President Biden announced that Israel and Hezbollah have reached a ceasefire agreement. I mean, it's a temporary one, I think 60 days, and then we'll see what will happen. But remember, all of this, of course, is happening as, this current administration under Biden is on its way out, and Trump and his team are ready to come in. And of course, I mean, if there's one thing which elect Trump has been very clear about, is that he wants to end conflict. So we'll see if that is indeed the case. But for now, it's good news. Now, coming to India, FIIs bought in the cash market yesterday. Remember, there were buyers day before yesterday as well, but there was that large MSCI flow. And the actual, net of the MSCI flow, the actual net cash number was hugely negative. But yesterday, there were buyers. And so if you count that as the first in the last 2 months, it's quite something. So the selling intensity had come off, and now at the margin, are they starting to buy? But it's just one day in that sense, so we'll have to watch this closely. So the levels don't change very much on the way down. The support for the Nifty comes in at between 23,956 and the 24,000 level. These are the two numbers. Decisive close on the Nifty above the swing high that we saw recently, which is 24,351, is going to give us an indication that maybe, the market can build in more gains here. And on the Nifty Bank, immediate resistance is 52,680. That is the 61.8% retracement of the full decline that we had. And you're not very far away from that level, about 1.5% from yesterday's close. On the way down, support comes in at the hourly average, which is 51,455 on the Bank Nifty as well. The Gift Nifty will come up on your screen, gives you a quick sense of how we're likely to start, about 40-odd points higher. Surabhi.
Absolutely. I think the cues are quite positive. By the way, I was looking at Trump's latest appointment, a gentleman called Kevin Hassett, and he's going to be leading the National Economic Advisory Council that they have. Whatever little I could read on the gentleman he seems like a bit of a hawk. He was part of the previous administration as well. He's been supporting punitive tariffs in the past, corporate tax cuts in the past, and sanctions on anyone who's buying Iranian oil. That's past track record. Let's see. But anyway, that aside, I'd say we're waking up to 3 great pieces of news this morning. So first, let me put the 3 on the table. Number 1, the ceasefire that we spoke of. Number two, the fact that markets are kind of taking a lot of this rhetoric on trade tariffs in their stride, perhaps waiting for the real bite to come in. Right now, it's a lot of talk, so we'll see what happens after the 20th of January. That's the kind of mood in the market. The third piece of good news that we have here locally is that FIIs have begun to buy. Is the selling finally coming over, coming to an end? That's a big question. So 3 good pieces of news. Let's just go through them one by one quickly. First of all, global markets mixed, yes, but some of them are still trading with a shade of green. There's no major sell-off or anything like that. There are rate cuts in the region. By the way, New Zealand has surprisingly cut rates by about 50 basis points. They were really high. Even after this 50 basis points cut, they're at about 4.25. So that's what's going on. There was inflation data in Australia, which is actually quite fine. Inflation numbers about 2% thereabouts, a little lower than expected. Then on the ceasefire, yesterday, the U.S. President, Joe Biden, he called it, an agreement that is designed to be a permanent cessation of hostilities. And that's something that people will really want to hold on to in financial markets and otherwise, that this is going to be permanent and this doesn't lead to more skirmishes suddenly. Finally, coming to the other bit, the FPI selling, the good local news here. The market's been rebounding, remember, 1,000 points over Friday and Monday. Yesterday was a pause day. But look at this. And, yesterday we were saying that take the FII number with a pinch of salt, that 9,000 crores of buying that happened because of the MSCI rebalance. But again, even in yesterday's trading action, you've got a small incremental positive figure, the first in many, many, many weeks. But it was, I think, 42 days of selling. Then we had the 9,000 crores of buying on Monday. And this is a follow-up to that. Domestic institutions were on the sell side, actually, for a change yesterday. Lots of interesting corporate news to track today. Number one, watch out for Siemens. Could be really good because the numbers that came out, the quarterly report, looks absolutely great. You can argue that the top-line growth at about 11% is a little lower than estimates, but operationally the performance is rock solid and strong. EBITDA is higher. Profits have jumped over 40%. And there's major margin expansion. The margin expansion that Siemens has posted is better than estimates. So I'm going to watch out for this one. And in the same league of the CapEx and power story, NTPC Green is listing today. It's a large IPO, 10,000 crores. Now, everyone is, aware of this. It's not likely to be a very big listing pop. 2-3% is the kind of, premium that was doing the rounds in the so-called grey market. So the issue price is 108, maybe get 3-4 rupees higher at the start. But perhaps this is going to be one of those longer-term stories that you need to see how it plays out. And finally, last but not the least, I'll watch out for Mahindra & Mahindra. Those high-profile EVs were unveiled yesterday. The stock has been on a roll, and some of the brokerages that have been writing about it, Nuvama, for instance, was reading their note in the morning, quite optimistic on the stock and on the prospects of these models because they're packed with features, which is the Mahindra way, and they've been offered at a fairly competitive price. More on this as we go ahead. But yeah, those are some visuals that came in from last evening. Looking good, feeling positive, Nigel.
Well, that's right. And let's take the top cues then coming in from overnight itself. The dollar index that was strengthened a little bit. It went up to approximately, by around 0.2% or thereabouts. The yields, though, the 10-year yields, well, that is more or less well-behaved or, around that range of around 4.3% or thereabouts. And the good news overnight is obviously that ceasefire that we heard about, which has caused crude oil prices to stay subdued below that $73 per barrel mark. What about the positioning yesterday? What did the FIs did? Yes, they seem to be turning around in the cash market because that selling that we saw, at least that is subdued. It's turned into buy numbers. I'll tell you what, if it's more or less flattish as well, we'll take it. The longs, yesterday they were unwound by close to 8,500 contracts after the big short covering we have seen in the previous 2 trading sessions. And they added some mild shorts. So the short positioning continues at around 65%. And going by the long unwinding and the short addition, if you pull up a chart, you'll see from around 109 lakh contracts on the short side, it's gone up a little bit to around 1.2 lakh contracts. You want the FIs to be net short on the market. And if they're not going to sell in cash, well, that's going to be good news as well. Moving on. What about the F&O data? Well, how's the options data stacking up? 24,500, 24,400 called, both of them fairly active in trade, which gives you a broad range, right? On the downside, you're looking at the 24,000 mark. This is just for the day. And on the upside, around 24,400. And I say this because the last couple of trading sessions, we've gone to around 24,350, and we've faced some resistance out there. That's the high for the previous 2 trading sessions at around 24,350. So I think around the 24,400 mark, that seems to be a bit of a resistance zone. On the downside, 20 DMA, that's a reference point. So around 24,000, 23,950 odd, that should be a reference point just in the near term on the downside. The Nifty Bank, Well, that's been moving very, very well. Last few trading sessions, it's had a good run. Now you have both those two reference points that comes up for you on the screen. That's the 50 as well as the 100 DMA, which is close to around 400 points, 400 to 500 points away from current levels. So we'll keep an eye out on that. The Gift Nifty was suggesting a more or less flattish to a positive start, I think, the last time I checked. So the hope is that we get back to the previous day's high, that is at around 24,350, and then build on from there. So let's see how that goes.
Okay, well, Nigel, thank you very much for that. So that's the setup as we begin this morning in terms of the session. Let's quickly run you through the corporate interactions, which you will hear from, and some of them are at the bottom of the screen in terms of teas. So you'll hear from the Zaggle management. They've tied up with MasterCard, and we'll tell you all about it. Stocks, of course, done very well. 9 o'clock in the morning, we have Harshit Kapadia, Vilara Capital, and we talk about the CAPEX and that space, entire space in the market. 9:20, Sanjeev Prasad of Kotak Institutional Equities is the market master of the day. 9:30, Hitachi Energy India will talk to us about the latest order from Power Grid. Vimal Kejriwal of KEC at 9:40 on order wins. 9:50, we'll have the Indian Banks Association representative join us to discuss RBI's ECL framework and the health of the financial sector. It's the economy at 10:15 with Lata, and she'll be speaking with Upasana Chachra of Morgan Stanley. Stay tuned.